The international community is working to address Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Oh, that's right. The NATO Secretary-General will head to Poland and Estonia Tuesday as countries closer to the ongoing conflict express security concerns. NATO's response force was activated for the first time in history to protect NATO allies closest to Russia and Ukraine. Meanwhile, the UN General Assembly is meeting for the first time in 40 years to discuss Russia's actions. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said it is important nations around the world stand by the people of Ukraine.
Although Russian strikes are reportedly largely targeting Ukrainian military facilities, we have credible accounts of residential buildings, critical civilian infrastructure, and other non-military targets sustaining heavy damage. This escalating violence, which is resulting in civilian deaths, including children, is totally unacceptable. Enough is enough.
And the UN is not the only international body responding. Joining us now to talk more about NATO's response is Robert Bell. He is a defense advisor to the U.S. ambassador to NATO. Robert, thank you for being with us. This idea of NATO activating its response force for the first time in history in this particular way, help me understand what that means, help our viewers understand what that means exactly.
I think it's extremely significant because it means that by consensus, in other words, unanimity, all 30 members of the North Atlantic Council, all the members of NATO agreed to take this step. The rotating brigade can get in about a week. We put it together after the Crimea annexation in 2014, and it's been training and getting certified. But for all 30 members to agree to vote, in effect, to send that brigade in shows the strength and unity of the alliance.
And Robert, we know NATO has sent weapons and ammunition, but should it send more? Should it be doing more? What else can NATO do to support Ukraine, since it will not, of course, send ground forces? Is there something that could be done in the air, for instance?
Well, I don't think the no-fly zone in the air option really is available unless you're prepared to go right to the brink of World War III. Because to declare, this is not Bosnia or Libya, to declare a no-fly zone, you would first have to make missile strikes and airstrikes and take out the Russian air defense systems and hit their interceptors on their bases. And that would mean an attack on Russia. The escalatory risk of that would be phenomenal. But NATO has done quite a bit over the last years in terms of training the Ukrainian military. Some of the NATO procurement agencies have been used to facilitate getting weapons in, and then individual members of the alliance have taken their own decisions to send weapons, such as the Javelin anti-tank system, to assist the Ukrainian forces.
Robert, everyone's concerned at a moment like this of a miscalculation. You mentioned the fear of an escalation. With NATO activating this response force and with Vladimir Putin's public position being that NATO has become not a force for peace, but a force for war, is there a concern, or should we be concerned, that this activation could, in fact, deepen the crisis, not alleviate it?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear that the deployment of this brigade, this rapid reaction force, is a defensive measure that is strictly focused on protecting NATO territory, the countries that are covered by Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. I think much more worrisome in terms of a possible miscalculation or a raising of escalation risk was Putin's decision yesterday to put Russian nuclear forces into what he called a special mode of combat service. That term is very vague, and I'm sure our intelligence agencies are monitoring full time to see if Russian strategic forces are being elevated in their alert postures and uploading of weapons, flushing of submarines from ports or mobile missiles into force, all of those kinds of indicators. But at this point, it's not clear, at least to those of us in the public, what Putin meant by special mode of combat service, except that it completely contradicts the pledge he made just last month along with the other nuclear states, that a nuclear war could never be won and therefore must never be fought.
Yeah, a lot is not clear about Putin's motivation at this point. Robert Bell, defense advisor to the U.S. ambassador to NATO, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.